Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and well, I got the rubber gloves on. I'm standing next to a giant machine. So yes, today we're going to talk about resin printing. This is the Formlabs 4L. It was newly unveiled this week, and if you've been following our coverage of Formlabs resin printers, you could assume this is just a large version of the Form 4 printer I reviewed earlier this year. In many ways, that's exactly the case, but I think it's a fascinating machine. The technologies they've put in here, what inherits from the Form 4 and bringing it to the larger size and build volume that users of the Form 3L previously may have been used to. It's worth diving into what you can do with this machine. Now, right off the bat, you should understand this is not a hobbyist machine. Formlabs, while they sell machines to everyone, they are expensive machines meant for industry and professionals, people who are prototyping, who need parts that are reliable, consistent, need the wide range of resins they have available, from flexible resins to clear resins to tough resins that you can mold and iterate on. That's what these machines are for. And as we've visited workshops and labs from startups, hardware startups all around the country, these are kind of the machines we've seen set up, or companies that prototype and manufacture at large scale. Well, how does this machine differ from the 3L that you may have seen Adam set up in his shop previously a couple years ago as he was diving into large prop building with resin printing? It's a different light engine and curing engine completely. So with the Form 4, we saw Formlabs move away from the laser-based resin curing system they've had with that LPU. That was the laser system that went layer by layer, scanned each layer across the line, and move into a more traditional now MSLA-based system. So in this machine, on the bottom, there's a large array of UV curing lights. Then there's an LCD masking layer, and this masking layer has, like the Form 4, this pebbled release texture that allows for the film on the bottom of the tray to easily release, no tilting required. And then the trays themselves also have a mechanical mixer that then holds a bunch of resin, up to 2 liters here in these trays, and then a massive build platform. I have here, for example, the build platforms for the 3L and now the 4L. They're very similar. The 4L is a little bit wider, a little bit taller. It's really decided by the shape and the dimensions of that masking layer, that LCD. And so this is about 14 inches long, 7.7 inches tall here, and then the Z height is about 13.8 inches. So you can print things that are taller than a foot. And compared to the Form 4, this is the build platform of the Form 4, you can do almost several Form 4 build plates, a surface area of several of those on the 4L. It's not just double, though, in terms of the build volume. When you scale up on the X, Y, and Z axis, and you're orienting your models diagonally and maximizing that build volume, it really makes a difference. So one of the things I like to do is max out that build volume and show, for example, this is an X-Wing model that's the largest I could print on the Form 3 or the 3 Plus. And it's not that big. It's getting limited by how I could arrange it with the supports on that build platform. Moving to the Form 4, as I showed off in my review, pretty big in terms of the size difference. And that was just an increase really in one dimension of that build plate. Making it more rectangular allowed this to be positioned and scale up that much more. On the Form 4L, we're talking much, much bigger. I mean, this is almost like a full miniature model kit that you could print in one go, in one piece, and paint. and it would work on a film set as a model miniature. I mean, the details are incredible. This was printed at on the TUF 2000 at 100 micron layer height, and then something like this took about at 3,300 layers to about 18 hours to print, but massive when we're talking about the build volume. Now, also by changing from the laser-based curing system of the 3L, the 4L also doesn't have the seam line issue. So the 3L's build plate was actually a combination of two lasers units that move concurrently, but because they weren't perfectly flush next to each other, you could get a little seam line that you'd have to clean up if you were printing a large singular model. So you'd have to factor that in. It was in the slicer in preform that lets you know where it is. With the 4L, you don't have that. It's one layer curing all at once with those UV lights through that masking layer. Now, Formlabs hasn't listed publicly the resolution of the LCD curing mask, but they have said that the pixel dimensions, the pixel size of the LCD is 46 microns. A little bit smaller, actually, than what you'd find in the Form 4. Still a little bit bigger than like the high resolution LCDs you'd find in hobbyist printers, but when you're printing at this size and scale, you're really not printing at 50 micron layer heights. Most of the time, it's 100 microns, even 200 microns. And so that 46 micron pixel size with anti-aliasing, I think gives plenty of feature detail where you can make out, panel lines, you can make out all this geometry and even organic geometry where you see the bumps on the textures on the faces. It's all really, really visible and clear. Now, the other advantage, of course, it's speed, because it's curing that layer entirely at once. So the resins that we like to test with, we like the TUF 2000 resins, we love the clear resins, and speed is really a factor of the layer height. So it's really time per layer, and so those are the variables we're talking about. So like this X-Wing for TUF 2000, 3,300 layers, 18 hours, the clear model kit over there, the anatomical model, which I couldn't fit into that whole leg into the Form 4 build platform here, fit the entire model, all those component parts fit into the 4L. That was about 1,400 layers and about 12 hours. 12 hours for some of these other models as well. And so really, with the 3L, we were operating in a kind of like a weekend mindset, printing over multiple days. When we did the Bethesda Starfield project and we made the large Frontier ship, those were all printed on Form 3L printers, and we would have a spreadsheet, kind of optimizing and listing out all the components and thinking about how long each part would take to process. And when you're on a deadline in an effects shop, in a model shop, you have to really make sure these printers are running nonstop. And so they're running overnight, they're running over weekends, and some of those prints would be multiple days at a time. With about a 4 to 5x increase in speed, the prints here are really more of kind of like an overnight print, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, and at most something like this, like 18 hours. So you can start a print afternoon one day and have it ready the next afternoon or the next morning to then work on your next iteration. And where this really comes into sharp relief is using their fast resin, which is the version of, I think, previously called their draft resin. I have Adam's head here printed in Formlabs fast resins. It's printed at a 200 micron layer height. So in the FDM world, that's 0.2 millimeters, kind of standard for a high-end FDM printer, but kind of a thick layer height for resin printing. This at about 1,300 layers took an astounding 2 hours and 45 minutes to print. Mind-blowing. Our friends at FBFX did the 3D scanning and 3D modeling touch-ups for this model, but this is human scale now. It's a 1-to-1 scale version of a human. So you can imagine if you're printing things like eyeglasses or human accessories for people to wear, this is what that volume allows. And if you're printing at 200 micron layer height, and you're printing using their fast resin, you can get 2 or 3 of these printed in a day. I mean, these hands that Adam had for his carbonite model, also just a 4-hour print, again, using that fast resin, and this one at 1,700 layers. And with a build volume, both of these arms were printed at the same time. So in just 4 hours, you could get these props. It's blew my mind away. I mean, we were thinking in terms of weekend or week-long prints and overnight prints for the Form 4, and for some of these draft resins, same-day prints. If you divide the layers by the amount of time to print, and you factor in things like the heating up of the tray and the resin in the tray, it does reach that 80 millimeter per hour max speed time that they claim on their website. So, and on average, you're printing using their standard resins about 1 inch or 24 millimeters per hour. And even at that speed, if you're not printing tall, massive objects, you can get a whole tray full of objects done, again, in less than a day. But scaling up isn't just about the robustness of the printer. The tray here latches in, the mechanical mixer latches in. Everything is super easy to run and install, so you're not worrying with any bolts or anything. The build platforms lock into place using that latch. Things just work, which is a testament to the engineering of this machine. But you also have to change how you think about the way you process your 3D prints, because it's not just a matter of scaling up the model at hand. The resin is going to be the same mass per volume. And so when you're talking about objects of this size, if this was a solid object, it would be about 3.5 liters worth of resin. And even though there's enough space on the side to hold 2 1-liter cartridges, and the resin tank itself will hold up to 2 liters, you really don't want to be spending the money printing multiple liter objects. It's going to get expensive really fast. So thankfully, in the preform software, Formlabs has introduced features that we've been asking for a long time, namely the ability to hollow prints. So at touch of a button, you can determine your wall thickness, how much fidelity you want on the inside of these models, and then a print that would have been 3.5 liters if it was solid only consumed 700 milliliters of resin, which also not just a savings in resin, but allows me to use finer touch points for the supports, so it's easier to clean up and post-process. Post-processing at this scale also is another consideration, because there aren't going to be many cleaning tanks and buckets you can use to process these. Formlabs, of course, sells their wash L station, but the current wash L does need an adapter kit, so it can fit these build platforms and sit in there. But you can get away with using IPA and scrubbing off the resin. And what I found, that even without a FlexPlate Build Platform 2 equivalent, the base settings for the resins we've tested, it was really easy to pry off the supports from the base, and I wasn't worried about gouging myself. Like the lips that they have on the rafts, still really nice to pop those support bases off pretty easily. And that's what people are paying for when they go with Formlabs and they adopt a $10,000 large format resin printer. I haven't had a single failed print yet on this in the 2 weeks that we've been testing this. I've been monitoring them on the online dashboard, getting images of the finished prints using the time-lapse camera that's there. And it's a thing that just works. I mean, for professionals who don't want to be tinkering with machines, who need to have parts to deliver for projects for their clients. That's why we see these machines in those workshops, in those labs for the companies at that scale. I know, it's like I said at the start, this is not a hobbyist machine. This is not the kind of thing that the vast majority of you out there are going to be in the market for, but for us to get a sense of what it means for professionals, and for Adam to be able to get model kits that he can get turned over in a day for his prop building and his projects, and for things that allow us to make wonderful and fun content. This is going to be an invaluable tool added to the tested 3D printing workshop. I want to thank Formlabs for getting us access to the 4L and supplying the resin. We'll be using this in future projects with Adam in the coming weeks and months, but hope you found it informative. I'm Norm from Tested, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you guys so much for watching that video. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you we have some excellent merch. We have a 5-pack of demerit badges for sale right now at tested/store.com. We've got the I hung it off of level demerit badge, the I built the chair backwards demerit badge, the I hit my thumb with a hammer demerit badge. We've got the stapler in my finger demerit badge, and my favorite, I stuck the duct tape to itself demerit badge. Get yours now, tested/store.store. Tested-store. Tested. It's right here. There. Just click there.